Hey, how's it going? A lot of you people would have probably heard those red pill fools talk about that life apparently gets better after 30s. They have this well-known sort of saying that a man's life begins in his 30s. And I can't help but think every time I hear that how stupid it is and how completely opposite to the reality for most guys' lives is. They seem to think that men's lives improve because they get financially better off. But in reality, that's not really what depicts how good your life is. I know a lot of us had far better lives as teenagers because we had a social life. When I was younger, I always had girls' numbers in my phone. I was meeting new people. Sure, things were worse in a way that because you were getting into fights with people, you'd meet people who make enemies out of you for almost nothing. More chance of conflict. But I could walk into like a course or a building with a bunch of other people and you'd be looked at like a valid person. You'd be accepted as like one of them to some degree amongst some groups of people because you're another young person. You can make friends. I don't know anybody who's better off in their 30s now. Their social lives have been shot to hell. If they don't have their friends left over from when they were younger, they're not making any new ones. They're not making any new connections, really, unless it's through their jobs. Most of them haven't become better off financially. In fact, they're actually doing worse because when they were younger, they were more ambitious and they actually worked full time. A lot of them now have just given up. Some of them are bedrotting, some of them are studying, some of them are just doing nothing. And I see from every way they're pretty much worse off. When it comes to this idea that men are doing so much better because they've climbed this ladder and gotten better financially, these are only small examples of guys. Your average guy hasn't managed to become some rich success. In fact, most of them don't even own their own house. Most of them are probably never going to own their own house because, let's be real, the majority of guys aren't going to be climbing some ladder or getting into some great position of power where they're getting a significant amount of money to really change their lives. Most of these guys are actually worse off. They've become more reclusive. They don't go out anymore. When I was younger, even the guys who didn't do well still went out and socialized with other guys who didn't do well. And now it's like they have no relationships. Their only girls that they could ever get with, or their relationship options, is like some overweight single mother. If that. Most of them have been single for years. You're not meeting anybody in your 30s, really. You're not forming new relationships. And the ones who are just real extreme examples. For the most part, I would say in every metric of life, your looks, your fitness, your recovery, just your love for life in general, everything becomes significantly worse as you get older. So this idea that men's prime is their 30s, nothing compares for me to when I was in my teens. My peak was in my teens. Some guys it's their early 20s, but by 30 pretty much nearly everybody's burnt out and they're on the fast track down, riding the downward spiral, both hands on the handlebars, full throttle, heading down into the darkness. There is no improvement after this. It's just the fast track down to the retirement home. Man's 30s is just, from what I've seen, not just my own experiences, but the guys around me that I grew up with, and the guys that I've seen, people I've seen in not just from high school courses, everything, even the guys who are doing well with girls or doing well with friends, these days their lives are nothing. None of them have ever really gotten anywhere. And it's the same with the more guys I see online talking about this sort of thing. Unless it's the odd real exception, your 30s is going to be far, far worse than your teens and your 20s. I don't see anything better about it. The only point these people can argue is that your general life is going to get better because you have a house and a family and you've got all this money coming in, but from what I see, that doesn't represent the average guy. That's just the guys who've basically hit the jackpot.